In this video, we share the untold stories and rare photos of AnniFrid Lyngstad. AnniFrid Lyngstad came into the world as a product of a forbidden romance. Defying all odds, Frida found overwhelming success with the pop band Abba. But tragedy struck, and because of her, the group disbanded. Why was there so much bad blood between Lyngstad and fellow bandmate Agneta Falskog? Why was Frida blamed for Abba's split? Let's find out. AnniFrid has been unlucky for most of her life, and while music seemed to save her, the destruction was still going to happen and continue anyway. Her parents were in a forbidden romance, and this resulted in Lyngstad, her mother and her grandmother being banished from their village. Her father, Alfred Hass, was a sergeant in the German army, and he would fall in love with a daughter of the enemy country. Sinni Lyngstad was a simple Norwegian girl whose only mistake was getting pregnant for a German soldier. According to the rumors, Hass seduced her with a bag of potatoes, which was a very expensive commodity in wartime Norway. They started their romance, and in a few months she was pregnant with AnniFrid. He would abandon his family after the war ended, and Lyngstad grew up believing that her father had died in a shipwreck on his way back to Germany. She met him for the first time at the peak of Abba's success, but this time she was not interested in his love. They tried, but the father-daughter relationship never worked. It would have been different if I'd been a child, but it's difficult to get a father when you're 32 years old. AnniFrid on the reason why their relationship failed. Anyway, she was led into music by her grandma shortly after the death of her mother due to kidney failure. She was 21 at the time of her death, and Frida was barely 2 years old. As a child, her grandmother frequently sang her Norwegian songs, and this made her fall in love with music. Lyngstad started performing music in her local elementary school, and soon she became popular in the neighborhood because of her beautiful voice. But sadly, as revealed by her grandmother never attended any of her performances, and she died just before she joined Abba. Frida got her first musical gig at the age of 13 in 1958. She was to join Ivald X Orchestra as a Schlager singer, and Ivald had only positive things to say about the talented young girl. It was hard to believe that such a young person could sing that well. She was so easy to rehearse with, and she was not shy on stage, he gushed. Lyngstad's favorite songs were All of Me by Gerald Marx and Seymour Simons, Cole Porter's Night and Day, and Begin the Big Win by the same artist. Frida struggled after her grandmother's death, but she held closely the gift she left with her in music, and her life was going to change because of it. Maybe it was luck or talent, probably a mix of the two, but young Frida was going to be a hit with a rush of fame and influence that a few seconds of careless grip could have cost her everything. Her bright days started after she won a local talent competition organized by a record company, EMI Svenska. Part of the perks that came with this was a recording contract with the company, and also, she was required to appear at the country's most popular show at that time, Highlands Hollands. For such a troubled childhood, the universe was going to compensate her with this opportunity. It happened that the day of her show was the same day that Sweden switched from driving on the left side of the road to the right, and so people were urged not to drive on that day. So a lot of people were at home in front of the TV when Lyngstad performed her winning song. Never had they seen anything like it. Record companies and producers would contact Frida almost immediately, but she stuck with the company that brought her to the limelight, even though she did not find success immediately. Lyngstad recorded her first single on September 11, 1967, and she impressed on the job when she did all of her vocals with just one take. All of her early songs for EMI are included in the compilation album Frida 1967–1972, released by EMI Sweden in 1997. Her journey with Abba started in January 1968, after her performance on Studio 8 on national television. That was where she met future Abba member Agneta Falskog, who also performed her first single on the same program. They were not exactly best of friends afterward, but faith was going to tie them to the same band. One thing that was poorly advertised was AnniFrid's struggles during her time in EMI. She recorded over 7 solo singles, but none of them were commercially successful. To keep things going, Lyngstad would start performing in cabaret shows across Sweden. And that was where the magic happened. Love brought it all together, and it will also tear it apart. During one of her performances, AnniFrid met Benny Andersson, keyboardist of the Hep Stars, and they started a romance shortly afterward. Benny at that time was working with Swedish singer Björn Ulvaeus, who happened to be dating Lyngstad's long-forgotten friend Agneta Falskog. They all performed for the first time at the cabaret act called Festfolk. People couldn't believe how good they were together, and after the release of their single called People Need Love, they stamped their names in the heart of the Swedish musical industry. They renamed themselves to Abba, an acronym for the first letter of their names. Their breakthrough did not come until 1974, when they won the Eurovision Song Contest. Their new single, Waterloo, was the sound they registered with, and it won them the prize. The competition gave the song wings, and soon it was at #1 on the UK pop charts and #6 on the US Billboard Hot 100. Abba dominated the international music market for the next 7 years, exposing the bandmates to high levels of fame and influence. As you know, this could be a good thing and a bad thing, but for Abba, it sadly didn't do that much good. The group released top-charting singles like SOS, Mamma Mia, Knowing Me, Knowing You, and Dancing Queen, Abba's only single to peak at #1 in the United States. Benny and Lyngstad tied the knot in 1978, and Ulvaeus and Falskog in 1971. Things were going great until AnniFrid announced her divorce. After their separation in 1981, as expected, they struggled to keep things moving with Abba. By the end of 1982, they had stopped performing entirely, as they couldn't endure each other anymore. Interestingly, AnniFrid was the only one who openly regretted that there had never been a reunion until 2017. Anyway, after Abba ended, to help with the grief, Lyngstad got even more busy. After Abba's disbandment, Lyngstad enjoyed significant success in her solo career. Her first album was released in the same year that the group split, and it was a hit. The album was titled Something's Going On, and one of her tracks, I Know There's Something Going On, would top the charts in Belgium and Switzerland. It was also a top 5 hit in Austria. By March of the following year, it was the 20th biggest-selling single in the United States. Her success story continued, but this would be the last time she enjoyed attention like this. After the release of her next studio album, Shine, Lyngstad got tired of the chase and she slowed down. By 2004, she escaped into a hiatus, only making appearances at events and awards shows. Her last public project was the 2021 Abba's final album, Voyage. Lyngstad might have played an active role in tearing Abba apart, but she was eager to rebuild. Her only problem was convincing her bandmates. Eventually, things turned out okay, and while it did not end the way anybody wanted, they were still grateful to have performed at such high standards for so many years. People always wondered if there was ever a secret feud between these two talented singers, and though they publicly painted the picture that all is well, the story behind the scenes is not quite the same. After Abba disbanded, lots of rumors started flying around on the reason for the split, and many people believed that Agneta and Frida's love-hate relationship was the reason the group was not motivated to find a solution when internal conflicts arose. Anyway, Agneta, in an interview, would reveal the exact status of her relationship with her former bandmate, AnniFrid. While she denies the accusations of a rift between them, she also implies that they just could not get along. Being two different personalities, it happens that we are irritated over the other's quality and we are different. We also had different lives, she said. Not sure if they ever found common ground even after Abba, and that is one topic Frida is not very enthusiastic about in interviews. When you look at it all together, it's really difficult not to believe that Lyngstad deserves so much better. You can just say that she was unlucky in choosing the men she opened her heart to. Her first public relationship was with fellow musician Ragnar Fredriksson, and they quickly tied the knot in April 1964. Frida was only 18 when she exchanged vows with Ragnar. The couple had 2 children, Hans Ragnar and Anna-Lise Lotte. Sadly, their marriage ended in 1968, and they officially divorced in May 1970. Her next shot at love would have her in deep regrets even years after their separation. Frida met Benny in 1968, and they easily fell in love. They started living together by 1971, but did not get married until 1978, at the peak of Abba's success. Unfortunately, this seemed like a bad idea, as their union did not last more than 2 years. The couple separated in 1980, and by the following year, they were officially divorced. Benny kept up with the front that things were still okay between him and his ex-wife, but we could see through the cover. There was a lot of bad blood, which was actually understandable. He announced to Frida that he had met someone else, TV producer Mona Nickett, even before she could sign the divorce papers, and they got married that same year. There was no way Lyngstad could have been okay with that, but she said, "Now that Benny and I have broken up, we are able to work much better together. Our relationship is not as intense as it was, but we are still in contact." On the real reason for the divorce, Lyngstad revealed that they simply outgrew each other. Although from the outside they seemed to have so much in common, but once they tied the knot, they realized how unlike their passions and goals in life were. Things were so complicated afterward that Frida decided that it was best to leave London and return to where it all started for her, Sweden. In Sweden, she was met with love that would transform her into a princess. After Benny, Lyngstad seemed to have raised the bar just a little higher in choosing the men she let into her life, and so her next love was going to be an actual prince. Things moved quickly between her and Prince Heinrich Russo of Rus, and by 1992 he was leading her to the altar. As a consequence of their marriage, AnniFrid's name was changed to Princess AnniFrid Sydney of Rus. Unfortunately, tragedy struck again, and the prince would die from lymphoma in 1999. Frida was devastated. Each time she was close to finding lasting happiness, life had a way of visiting her with ugly endings. It was hard, but we saw the Dancing Queen singer pick herself up again from the ashes, ready to give it another go. 8 years later, AnniFrid found love again in the arms of British peer Henry Smith, 5th Viscount Hambledene. The couple has not tied it officially at the altar. They seem to enjoy things as they are, but they have been living together ever since. For 40 years, their voices grew faint in our hearts, and all of a sudden, they reminded us of what it used to be like with their final studio album, Voyage. The 2021 Abba album was met with a lot of criticism and negative reviews. Either that it was just not good enough quality when matched with contemporary sounds, or that their audience had adjusted and moved on. Anyway, one thing was still undeniable. Their voices brought so many memories, and we were glad that they got together again. Every one of the bandmates announced that this was definitely the last time they were all going to be involved in a project, but Lyngstad still kept hope alive. "I have learned to never say never," she said. "We have probably said that this must be the last thing we do. Think of our ages. We're no longer young, but you never know. Don't be so sure. The odds are not looking like it, but I'm taking it." Sounds a little selfish, but if Frida is counting on it, then I am also. These days, Lyngstad is taking steps back from the music industry due to her age, but still has not announced her retirement yet. So fans are looking forward to hearing her sing something new, maybe just for one last time. AnniFrid Lyngstad, now 78 years old, is unsurprisingly aging like fine wine. Her voice still echoes the richness, warmth, and depth of experiences that only a well-lived life can offer. She has an estimated net worth of $300 million. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our other videos of beautiful actresses from the yesteryears on the end screen.